No. I consider it to be more interesting, but it's okay. From the Times, this is from an article from the Times of the time. The show has attracted some rarefied VIPs, political figures with first-hand knowledge of the process, of the pressures and scandals that come with running the country. Those two things don't have to go hand in hand. Bill, Hillary, and Chelsea Clinton attended earlier this month, arriving just before the curtain to the surprise of audience members who had been craning their necks to glimpse Jake Gyllenhaal. Timothy Geithner, the former Treasury Secretary, has also seen it, as have the former Congressman, and this is where it gets a little dated, Anthony Weiner and his wife, Huma Abedin, as advisor to Mrs. Clinton. And last weekend, Dick Cheney and his wife, the historian Lynn Cheney, dropped in. Their review? I thought it was just great, Mrs. Cheney said in a telephone interview, adding that her husband had loved it too. Later in the article, the Times notes, the Cheneys did not go backstage. To Mr. Miranda's regret, I would have loved to talk to them, he said. Obama, here's Cheney again. I couldn't find a picture of him at the show, but it's next to the wing here. Obama famously said, shared love of Hamilton was the only thing he and Dick Cheney agreed on. But I could think of a few other things that they also shared a viewpoint on. Hamilton, I haven't seen it. Full disclosure. I promised myself when I was prepping for this talk that I would, but it's a promise that I'm glad I didn't keep. But I did read the Chernow book, and I recommend it. It's a wonderful book, and that's what the show is based on. But in reading it, I can't understand how someone could take that story and produce, what Hamilton the musical is. How can you take anything from the story than like how greed and ambition can twist a born monster into something even more monstrous? That's my take on it. But and I hope this doesn't come off as like a lot of character assassination, because a lot of what was a part of the story that people really responded to was the story of this guy, that he came from out of nowhere. He gets to the White House. He performs a version of the song which I have heard, which I think opens the show, and he performs it at the White House in front of Michelle Obama. That's Obama loving it. That was back in 2009 at an event called Evening of Poetry, Music, and the Spoken Word. But it's curious. It's like, well, how did a guy who only has one Broadway credit get to the White House to deliver the song? But this gentleman would kill to have the opportunity to do it.
But mine has no hip hop dance.
Okay, I mean it could. Yes. Despite what people believed at the time, this wasn't just like a kid from the Bronx making it all to the White House with like talent and a dream. Because the reason that he was even there that night is because of his father. So this is Louis Miranda, okay? He's Lynn's father. He's a real estate speculator. He's a corporate lobbyist. And he's a former longtime fixer for the Clinton family, as well as various other rogue elements within our beloved Democratic Party. Now, Louis Miranda has been rocking back and forth between public service and private enterprise for the last 40 years. He started out advising Ed Koch when he was mayor of New York City. He advised Rudy Giuliani, not his successor, but a future mayor and future snake. He founded a nonprofit and then a lobbying firm. All the while, he was consulting for the likes of Hillary Clinton, Chuck Schumer, Cuomo, our current AG, Letitia James, who, while she was supposed to be prosecuting Amazon on behalf of workers, Louis's firm was accepting money to lobby on behalf of Amazon. Now I bring him up as well because he's also central to the story of Hamilton, of just this cultural figure and this movement, really, what I believe it is. And I'm going to quote from the New Inquiry, wonderful publication. Luis Miranda is also heavily involved in his son's career decisions, particularly as they relate to Lin-Manuel's political forays. Lin-Manuel has expanded his sphere of influence within the political networks between New York and Puerto Rico, and Mr. Miranda, in turn, has an outrageously popular public relations song and dance man at his disposal. Lin-Manuel becomes the face of political advocacy for Puerto Rico, guided by his father's business desires. So let's get to that political advocacy and those business desires. This is a little more about McMurray, which is his group, his lobbying group. Does anyone know what Promesa is?
Yes. No, Puerto Rican.
So, at the peak of Hamilton popularity, a bill came up in the United States Congress to determine the financial future of the island of Puerto Rico, the place where Luis Miranda was born and that Lin-Manuel thinks of as his cultural birthright. So in 2015, Puerto Rico was about to default on their debt. They were broke because for about 100 years they had been run by Americans like a sugar plantation and a coffee plantation, while holding companies back in the mid-Atlantic states were reaping huge profits and off the backs of Puerto Rican labor, with none of that money staying in the country. So this imperial operation was looting the island's resources and allowing or encouraging mismanagement. And so when the bill came due, like the bill for all the debt, when it came due, instead of letting them act like a proper U.S. state, they, which always has budget shortfalls, right? A bill called Promesa was introduced. So Promesa stands for the Puerto Rico Oversight, Management, and Economic Stability Act, which created an oversight board. I think it's 8 people, appointed by the President of the United States, a lifetime appointment that is meant to restructure the island's debt and dictate all of its spending. So essentially, Puerto Rican people have no say over how their money is spent, budgets, and none of this has to, none of these decisions have to be made in a public hearing or with any kind of roll call or any vote at all, or any transparency at all. Now, I bring this up because Lin-Manuel and his father fought very hard for Promesa to pass. Lin tweeted, he appeared on the, he petitioned the halls of government, he appeared on the John Oliver show, John Oliver had him on, and you know, there's a lot of crazy things in this act. But I'm also having problems. Okay. Restructured debt. So it cut the minimum wage from $7 to $4.25. It took away money for education, which I think is incredibly ironic that like a historical musical would lead to education budget being slashed. So it's such an ironic, terrible thing that happens. And it's also ironic that Alexander Hamilton, like, you know, what he wanted to do at his time was what was put in place with this Promesa Act. He wanted to restrict the vote and to have like more of a sagacious group of elites control the government and without the say of the people. Puts hedge funds ahead of people, which is very true. Again, op-ed in the New York Times. So, because of this, people left in droves. I mean, when you can't control how your country's being run, you go elsewhere. So that gap that resulted, capitalists just flooded in. So in San Juan, there's this whole cryptocurrency enclave. Monsanto has moved in. Because really, Promesa hasn't worked. All these austerity measures haven't led to the more balanced books. And everything was made worse when, in 2017, Hurricane Maria hit the island and just, you know, further destroyed the economy. You know, Promesa is still the law of the land after 6 years. So when he was advocating for this, it wasn't as the creator of In the Heights. It was as the Hamilton guy, right? He even went so far as to offer Republican congressmen tickets to the show if they voted for the measure. So this is great. This is him with Clooney. They announced a new deal to bring Nespresso to reinvigorate the coffee industry in Puerto Rico, but you could just give seeds and maybe some increased water production, but no, it has to be like this branded venture. And yeah, it all goes back to this. I mean, here's everyone backstage at the house. Now he has since like apologized, although if you read this text, I don't know that I see an apology here. I mean, it's a recognition of a misstep, but you know, it's too late, really. It's this is what happens when, you know, there's that saying that a little knowledge can be a dangerous thing. And history is really powerful stuff, as we know. The wrong tools, the wrong interpretation, in the wrong hands, can make the world a materially worse place. And it's, you know, it's particularly frustrating to me because, like, there is a sentiment in this country that what we have been told, or maybe like a 20th century narrative that the founders were, you know, virtuous and good people. We're all challenging that now, right? We're all looking to say, like, you know, what is this kernel of truth and liberty and justice that we can latch onto? And so to sell this guy, Hamilton, in that place is to me a you know, terrible thing. Especially when, you know, Thomas Paine is sitting right in the wings. He's on the menu. He's been the special of the day every day for 240 odd years. So I wrote a book about Paine. I called it Fort Nonsense, New Jersey. And I wanted to contextualize him within the wider independence movement and answer the critics who say there were no good founders, right? Or that America has always been this kind of cynical, cash-grabbing enterprise. Because as you know, research, it's 2020, yeah. Within the last 2 years, we've now proved that Hamilton was a slave owner. He traded in slaves when he was a young man back in the Caribbean, but you know, there's proof. So you'd think it would spell the end for his adoration of the left and kind of discredit American history in general, but that hasn't translated for some reason. So